Hi, this is Amy Lilien-Harper, Certified Zentangle Instructor, back with you to talk a little bit about the rest of the process of creating Zentangle Art and to introduce you to our materials. So the first thing I want to show you is our tools, and I'm going to start off with the pens. So this first pen is a Sakura Micron 01 pen. It has a very, very fine point. You may be able to see that. And if you flip the top over, you can see it does say 01 on the top, and that is my preferred pen. There's another pen. This is a Micron PN, also by Sakura, and this one it says PN on the top, and you can see that this one has a very different kind of point. This one is a hard point. The Micron 01 has a point that you can actually, if you push down too hard, squish. So this one is actually a nice for younger people or for people who tend to bear down really hard with their pens. The Micron 01 has a finer point. This one, the ink comes out a little thicker, but it's still a really nice pen. And I also have this pencil. It says Zentangle on it, as you can see, and it's a very small pencil. And when we use it primarily for shading. But when we use it, what you do with it is instead of holding it upright like a regular pencil, you kind of tuck it into your palm, and then you can use it sort of to the side like this to shade rather than using the point, and that gives you a better effect. This last tool is called a tortillon. It's French, and it's a blending tool, and if you've done art before, you may have used it, and it's just basically made out of paper, and we use it to soften the lines when we're shading. And this is a brand new one, so it's not got any color on it. If I was using an older one, you would see it would be black at the tip. And these are our tiles. Now this is a standard tile, and you can see it says Zentangle on the back, and it's got the website, and it is a little bit smaller than 4x4. So you can see it fits nicely in my hand, and it is square because that allows you to rotate as you are working, which allows you to keep your hand in a comfortable position the whole time you're working. The second tile I have here is called a bijou tile, and you can see it's significantly smaller. It's hard to see on top, but let me just slide. You can see it's significantly smaller than the traditional tile. I will be doing a lot of my videos on bijous because it allows me to complete an entire tile in a much shorter period of time, which keeps the videos a little bit shorter and more manageable. So you'll be seeing me use the bijous a lot, but this tile is the standard size tile. And when I do my usual tangling, I work on a tile this size. The tiles do actually come in multiple colors at this point, and you can work with different colored pens. But so far I've been working with a traditional black and white because that's easier for people to get their hands on something that, if it's not identical, is similar to what I'm working with. So just a few more things. You can see I have a bookmark here, and it says right on it, the 8 basic steps to the Zentangle method. So the first thing that we do when we begin the Zentangle method is we relax, take a few deep breaths, and take a few minutes to just appreciate the time that we have to work, our wonderful materials, and just the opportunity that we have here. Now, before I go any further with what we have here, I want to just point out two other things. One of them is that there's something missing that we often have in our art supplies. And I usually try to make my students see if they can figure it out, but I'm just going to tell you. So I have no eraser. The reason there's no eraser is because Zentangle functions with a no mistakes philosophy. There are no mistakes, there's only happy accidents. And there's nothing that can be so terrible that it's not fixable. So basically what that means is if you make what you consider to be a mistake, you just keep going and try to work around it. Or you may find that what it does is adds a new dimension or a new piece of interest to your art. But basically the idea is that you're supposed to let go of that tension of what if it's not perfect and just enjoy it. It's really about the process. And that's the other thing is it's really about the process, not the product. It's not so much what you're creating as it is the process of creating it and enjoying that time. Although I can promise you'll be creating absolutely beautiful artwork. And when you're done, you think, I had no idea I could do that. So once we have had our gratitude and appreciation, the next thing we would normally do is we would take our tile and we would put 4 dots, one in each corner. So I'm just going to do that to this tile. And you can see I do it pretty lightly because the pencil work at this point is really just a guide. It is not a necessity. You don't need to use it. You can ignore it. But a blank piece of paper can be very overwhelming. So by creating a border, we give ourselves a bit of a framework. So once I've created my 4 corner dots, I just use my pencil to connect them. And you'll notice that I'm rotating my tile as I go. And you'll also notice that my lines are not perfectly straight. They're not perfectly even. They're not perfect in any way because humans are not perfect. And that is totally fine. And if you take the opportunity to watch Maria Tangle, and she does Tangle online. You can see some of her videos. You will notice she often purposefully makes her lines not straight or not even or not the same because she likes it. She thinks that that adds interest. So even the people who've created this don't make perfect lines. So once you've put your 4 dots in and created your border, now you no longer have a blank piece of paper and you have something to work in. The next thing that you normally would do is create your string. A string can be anything. You could do a big zigzag. You could do a curly Q. You could do the letter of someone's name. You could do a number. You could draw a square and then draw some other stuff around it. It doesn't matter. I'm not actually going to put one on here because we're not moving on to that part right now, but that is what you would normally do. And then you start to tangle. Now at this point, once you've done your 4 corner dots in your border and you've created your string, you're actually going to put your pencil away. You're going to pick up your pen and you're going to start to tangle. Now, I keep saying tangle and tangles, so let me just give you a little bit of information. So we call each of our patterns a tangle. And the tangles all have very specific sets of strokes that you do to create them. Some of them are very complex, some of them are very simple. Many of them look much more complex than they are. And all you really need to be able to do to create these tangles is to be able to make a series of lines. So if you can draw an S curve, and it can be forwards or backwards depending, and you can create a line, and you can create a C shape, and you can create an orb. We call them orbs because they are not perfectly round, they're not perfectly circular, they're not perfect in any way, but they are roundish. Then you can do Zentangle because pretty much everything we do uses some form of one of these shapes. So once you've gotten out your pen and you have created your series of tangles, and each one of these patterns is called a tangle, and there are definitely hundreds, probably thousands of different patterns at this point in time. So once you've created your string and started to tangle, and you may choose whichever tangles you want, and you can stay within your string or you can break outside your string. Your string, much like your border, is really just a guide to give you a little bit of framework. But if your tangle wants to break outside of the string you're working in, that's totally fine. If it wants to break out of the border, that's fine too. There's no real official rules. Once you've completed your ink work, then you would take your pencil and use it to shade. And once you've put down some of your graphite, you would use your blending tool to blend. And then once you've completed a piece of art, you will take it and you're going to hold it a little bit away from you so you can take a look at it and really appreciate it, because it's going to look so different once it's done and from a distance than it has looked as you've been sitting looking at it close up the whole time. Then you're going to initial it. You're going to put we call it your chop, and it's your initials in some form somewhere on your tangle. Then you're going to turn it over and sign the back. And I usually sign it and date it. And I often will write what tangles I used or something about when I was doing it, any information you want. And when I teach my classes, when I turn it over, I always write down the names of the tangles. All the tangles have names. So you'll know what tangle you did when you go back to it later, or tangles you did. And then you just appreciate the fact that you had the time to do this and that you made a beautiful piece of art. So that's your little introduction to the process of creating Zentangle art and the tools we'll be using. And now you're ready to start with one of my videos. I hope you will join me again soon, and I hope this was helpful.